So this is a very sobering picture of jobs we don't think about when we waltz into a supermarket. I think that some of us, especially probably the people listening to this talk, are aware of field and food raising jobs, the difficulties of them. Economic Opportunities Program, we at Food and Society have worked a lot with the Coalition of Immokalee Farm Workers, which has raised national visibility and concern about workers' jobs in fields, and there are other organizations, and it's something we can never think about too much. Are there other unseen jobs you found in your research we should be thinking about as we walk into a supermarket?
Oh gosh, I mean, yeah, I think the whole first all praise Coalition of MLB workers. I'm so glad that you brought them up. If we get a chance to talk about the positives, I think we should circle back there. Um, I mean, look, I think I was unaware of just the network of brokers and buyers and manufacturers, how a manufactured product gets to shelf, especially one that starts off as a raw commodity that's sourced. Um, there's just so many components. I think I grew up with this image of a supply chain that was boxes with arrows, and they were basically like box cars, on a train. That they're pretty linear, and it's like no. In the book, I look at the Thai shrimp supply chain, and I use that as a microcosm of because I think it is very indicative of a number of complicated supply chains that make up backbone commodities that we use. It's like a six layer supply chain. And if you were to draw those arrows, you'd just have hash marks all over because it's very intersecting. Still a small broker. Both the people who are sourcing the raw ingredients for the aquaculture that shrimp come from are small holders with individual boats. A lot of the shrimp producers are still small holders. That itself is fractured into like hatcheries, into people raising mature shrimp, into into processing plants. So the volume that the modern supermarket depends on, and these chains depend on a volume of supply that has so many small actors, and each of those actors is involved in a war for lowest price. The grocery store is structured around what we haven't really talked about, like kind of the big structural forces in the grocery store, but it's structured around volume, and it maintains that volume by maintaining very small margins and a very low price, so that people buy a lot. And the way you get an advantage is by keeping that price low. And the way you keep that price low is that you put a lot of pressure on your buyers, put pressure on the importers and the exporters and the manufacturers to give them a lower price. They put pressure on the people who are producing for them, and they put pressure on the people who are doing the raw materials. And that pressure just gets compounded all down the chain for lower and lower price in a way that just completely amplifies when you get to the bottom, and often comes out of workers. So your question of like where the hidden actors are, it just from the brokers who aggregate things, that was like a big source of surprise for me. How powerful they are, how subject they are to price controls, and what a role they play in supply chain visibility or invisibility in terms of sourcing from a wide swath of producers and being able to offer a manufacturer kind of plausible deniability about where their product comes from, especially if you have three or four brokers that you're sourcing from, and they all just assure you that, like, yeah, of course, those farms are great. You're not going to know because there's so much work to go into the supply chain on that level and source from individual local producers, especially in something that is not like agribusinessy and not super vertically integrated. All these kind of things that I think a lot of people walking around food think of as like really bad. We lift up the family farm and we lift up the smallholder, but what it does is it creates a lot of invisibility in the supply chain because sourcing from all sorts of smallholders requires a lot of hidden actors.